Welcome to Sleepy Classic Tales. Today we travel together into the world of a story that is often considered heavy, old, or difficult, and precisely for that reason, surprising. The Rider on the White Horse, published in 1888, written by Theodor Storm. The story is set on the North Sea coast in the 18th century and tells of a man who fights against nature, tradition, and the fear of the people. This is our own calm, short version. Part 1. It begins with an encounter. A traveler is on his way through the flat land along the North Sea. The wind is strong, the sky low, and the dike stretches like a dark line across the landscape. Suddenly, he sees him. A rider, dressed entirely in gray, on a large, pale horse. The man rides without a sound, too quietly, almost as if he does not touch the ground. For a moment, the traveler believes it must be an apparition, a story one tells later when the evening grows long. But the rider is real, and he bears a name that is not forgotten in this region. Hauke Haien. To understand who this man was, one must go back, far back, to a small village on the coast where life is shaped by the sea, by water that nourishes and destroys. Hauke is different even as a boy. While other children play, he stands on the dike. He observes. He calculates. He understands early that the dike is not simply a wall, but a promise that holds only if it is built correctly. But in this village, knowledge is not regarded as strength, but experience, not calculation, but tradition. It has always been this way, is an argument here. Hauke learns, he reads, he thinks further than is expected of him, and exactly that makes him dangerous. As he grows into adulthood, he finds himself within a community that fears change. For anyone who brings something new calls the old into question. And on the coast, that means calling survival itself into question. Hauke wants a new dike, a better one that can withstand the sea. The others want peace. No one yet suspects that this decision will determine not only land and water, but life, guilt, and fear, and the fate of a man who risks everything because he is convinced that one must confront nature not with superstition, but with reason. Hauke Haien grows up in a world in which everything has its fixed place. Not because it is good, but because it has always been so. The dike is maintained as it has always been maintained, repaired where it breaks, patched where it yields. But no one asks the decisive question, whether it truly still holds. Hauke asks it. He works as a servant for the dike reeve. He listens, he calculates. He observes every weak point, every curve, every place where the water stands longer than elsewhere, and he says it calmly and matter-of-factly. The dike is built incorrectly. Not everywhere, but at decisive points. Too flat, too soft, too much left to chance. The reaction is rejection. Not loud, not aggressive, but quiet and firm. They listen to him, they nod, and they continue as before. For who is this young man who believes he knows more than the generations before him? But Hauke does not give up. He works harder than the others, more precisely, more disciplined, and slowly people begin to notice his diligence. When the old dike reeve dies, a gap appears, not only in office but in order. Hauke uses this moment, not with loudness, not with intrigue, but with competence. He presents plans, calculations, drawings. For the first time, the men of the village see not only a dreamer, but someone who can explain why the dike holds or does not. A decision is made, hesitantly, with reservations. Hauke Haien becomes the new dike reeve, a man without an old name, without a great family, without backing in the stories of the people, only with his knowledge. He begins to act immediately. He reorganizes the work. He changes procedures. He plans a new dike, steeper, stronger, built according to his calculations. And exactly here, the real conflict begins. For the village senses this man does not want to preserve. He wants to change. And change is more dangerous on the coast than any storm. While Hauke builds, the rumors begin. People whisper, they doubt. And when he buys a large white horse, powerful and restless, fear gains an image. For whoever is different quickly becomes unsettling, and whoever acts against tradition is eventually no longer merely observed, but feared. The new dike grows slowly, layer by layer, day by day. Hauke Haien is everywhere at once. He measures, he inspects, he corrects. What others see as exaggeration is necessity to him, for he knows the dike forgives no mistakes. At first, everything appears calm. Construction progresses, the dike holds. But as the structure grows, the mood in the village changes. The people observe, not openly, not hostile, but watchful. They see a man who makes decisions alone, who explains little, who rarely shows doubt. And they sense he is not only building a dike, he is building against their certainties. The old dike was familiar. Its weaknesses were known. One knew where it yielded and where it held. The new dike is different, steeper, higher, foreign. And what is foreign creates fear. When a particularly strong storm approaches, the villagers gather, not to help, but to see whether Hauke is right. The water rises. The waves strike the new dike. Hauke stands above, still and observant. The dike holds. For a moment, something like admiration hangs in the air, an unspoken respect. But it does not last long. For where no damage occurs, no relief arises, only disappointment. Many would rather have seen the dike fail, not out of malice, but to have their doubts confirmed. Instead, the feeling grows that this man might be right. And nothing is more dangerous than someone who is right against the majority. Hauke notices the change. He feels the distance, the glances, the silence. But he remains steadfast. He knows the true storm does not come with the wind, but with the fear of the people. When a child dies, not through the sea but through a tragic accident, the village finds someone to blame. Not openly, not officially, but in conversations, in glances, in the stories told in the evenings. The dike reeve, the stranger, the one with the white horse. And slowly something begins to thicken. Not the dike, but the conviction that progress demands its price, and that this price must have someone to carry it. The years pass, and the new dike becomes part of the landscape. It stands firm. It holds. But it does not bring peace. Hauke Haien now lives more withdrawn, not because he avoids people, but because he realizes that every word is misunderstood. What he says sounds like instruction. What he explains sounds like arrogance. So he speaks less. His wife stands by his side. She believes in him, in his calculations, in his conviction that knowledge can protect. but she too senses how lonely this struggle has become. The old dike, the one Hauke wanted to replace, still lies out in the land, abandoned and unused. Hauke knows it is dangerous, that in an emergency it could redirect the water, that it remains a weak point. He demands that it be removed completely. But this time, resistance is open. The old dike belongs to history, to memory. People worked there, lived there, celebrated there. To destroy it feels to many as if one were erasing a part of themselves. Hauke insists. And exactly here, the crack appears. Not in the dike, but between him and the village. People begin not only to question his decisions, but to block them. Work is delayed, agreements ignored, instructions circumvented. Hauke realizes that his authority exists only on paper. And while this conflict smolders, the sea changes. The winters grow harsher, the storms stronger, the water more unpredictable. He recognizes the signs. They are in his calculations, in his observations, but his warnings fade away. People have grown tired of his caution. They want normality. When news arrives that an exceptionally severe storm is approaching, the village reacts hesitantly. They close the gates. They secure what can be secured, but they do not follow every instruction. And while the wind increases and the water rises, Hauke stands once more on the dike. Not triumphant, not afraid, but alert. For he knows this storm will not test who was right. It will show who was prepared. The storm comes faster than many expected. The wind lashes across the land and presses the water against the dike as if testing how serious the people truly are about their protection. The sea rises relentlessly, layer upon layer. Hauke Haien knows that every decision now counts. Not tomorrow, not later, now. He rides along the dike, his white horse standing out against the dark sky. To some he appears like a sign, to others like a warning. At one point, what he feared occurs. The old dike, never removed, redirects the water. Not much, but enough. The current strikes the new dike at a dangerous angle. The water begins to gnaw. Not visibly, not yet. Hauke recognizes the danger immediately. He gives orders. He calls for help. He calls for men. But only a few come. Fear runs too deep. Distrust too strong. While the storm rages, calculation turns into struggle. Hauke tries to relieve the pressure on the dike. He orders openings, diversions, sacrifices. For he knows it is better to lose land than to lose lives. But this decision becomes his undoing. The village does not see protection. It sees loss. It sees fields being flooded, property disappearing underwater, and while Hauke acts, the mood finally turns. A cry cuts through the night, then another. People panic. Animals break loose. Order dissolves. In this chaos, the unthinkable happens. Hauke's wife and his child are near the old dike. A wave breaks through. Not high, but strong enough. When Hauke learns of it, it is as if the ground disappears beneath him. He rides toward them, against the wind, against the water, but he arrives too late. The sea, against which he has calculated his entire life, knows no mercy. What remains is silence in the midst of the storm, and a man who did everything to protect others, and has now lost everything that personally mattered to him. The storm slowly subsides. The wind loses strength. The water sinks, as if the sea has taken enough. What remains is a land barely recognizable. Fields stand under water. Fences have vanished. Houses are damaged. And over everything lies a silence heavier than any noise before. Hauke stands alone on the dike. The man who calculated, planned, warned for so long is now silent. Not from shock, but from emptiness. His wife is dead. His child is dead. Everything that bound him to this life has been taken by the water. The people gather, not to comfort him, not to understand. They search for someone to blame, and they find him quickly. The dike reeve, the man with the white horse, the one who built differently, the one who sacrificed fields, the one who did not listen. So they now tell it. No one speaks anymore of calculations, no one of warnings, no one of the fact that the old dike should never have remained standing. What counts is loss, and loss demands a name. Hauke hears the accusations. He does not contradict them, not because they are true, but because they no longer reach him. Something inside him has broken beyond repair. He mounts his horse slowly, without haste, without destination. The white horse carries him out into the flooded land where sea and earth are still struggling with each other. Some later say they saw him still riding, how horse and rider became one with the darkness. Others say it was only a story, an image people tell when they cannot bear guilt. What is certain is that Hauke does not return. The dike remains, damaged but standing. And the people must live on with the knowledge that the man they feared may have been the only one who truly tried to protect them. After the storm, everyday life returns, slowly, hesitantly, with lowered eyes. The dike is repaired, not perfectly, but sufficiently. People do what they have always done. At first, little is said about Hauke. The events are too recent, too uncomfortable. But with time, the stories begin. They are told in the evenings, in rooms, in taverns, quietly at first, then with more certainty. They speak of the white horse seen on the dike, of a figure in the mist appearing when a storm approaches. They say the dike reeve still rides, that he checks whether everything holds, whether people have learned from the past. Others laugh and call it superstition, children's tales. And yet, when the wind sweeps across the land at night and the water rises, even the skeptics glance toward the dike. For the story of Hauke has become more than the memory of a man. It has become a warning and a relief. For as long as one tells him as a ghostly figure, one does not have to ask whether he might have been right. The new dike stands year after year, storm after storm. And slowly, people begin to admit what they could not admit back then. That calculation is not betrayal. That knowledge is not dangerous. That fear often speaks louder than reason. But this insight comes late, too late for Hauke. He remains a figure between worlds. For some, a ghost, for others, a tragic human being. And perhaps that is the only thing a community can endure. That one understands someone only after it is no longer possible to bring him back. Many years have passed since that night when the storm swept across the land and Hauke disappeared. The village has changed, not visibly at first glance, but noticeably to those who have remained. The dike still stands. It has been repaired, reinforced, in some places even according to the plans Hauke once designed. People do not like to speak of it, but it is so. When new work becomes necessary, calculations are consulted, Measurements are more precise, inspections more careful, and people rely less on mere feeling. The fear of the sea has remained, but it has taken on a different form. Once it was tied to superstition, to stories, to dark ideas of punishment and guilt. Now it is more sober, colder, almost factual. People know that the sea has no intentions, that it neither punishes nor forgives, that it simply comes when conditions allow. And exactly this knowledge was what sustained Haukahayan his entire life. But memory functions differently from knowledge. For the children of the village, Haukahayan is not a historical figure. He is a figure of legend, the man on the white horse, the dike reeve who rode against the sea, the one who vanished when the storm was strongest. They are told to be careful when they walk along the dike at night, to respect the wind and the water. Not everyone believes these stories, but almost everyone listens to them, for they serve a purpose. They keep something awake that might otherwise be forgotten, that progress can cause fear, that reason can be lonely, and that those who recognize what is necessary early are often the last to be heard. The traveler who once saw the rider on the dike returns years later. He stands at the same place. He sees the sea. He sees the dike. And for a brief moment he wonders whether the image from back then was truly an apparition or merely the memory of a man ahead of his time. Perhaps it was both. For Haukahayan has vanished, but his thinking remains. Not as a name, not as a monument, but as quiet knowledge that lives on in the decisions people make today. And so this story does not end with victory, and not with defeat, but with the realization that some people are only understood once their work no longer belongs to them, but to everyone. The dike holds, the sea comes and goes, and somewhere between water and land lives the memory of a man who wanted nothing more than to protect the people, even if they could not love him for it. And with that, today's story comes to an end. Perhaps you are now wondering how strongly our calm, short version differs from Theodor Storm's original from 1888. Why progress here fails despite being reasonable, necessary, and well-founded, and how much of Storm himself lives within this story, and why this theme accompanied him throughout his life. We explore these and other questions in our accompanying book, Golden Pages, Volume 2. There you will find the stories from the podcast in written form, along with deeper background and interpretations for each work. Good night, and if you like, we will listen to each other again tomorrow on Sleepy Classic Tales.